Tonight is the July 10th meeting of the North Kingstown Building Subcommittee. A couple of just house cleaning items before we actually begin. So the first, if anybody wants to talk during public comment, if you could please go to the podium and sign your name and address on that sheet. In about 2 minutes, one of us will be walking up getting that sheet. And so that's how you talk during public comment. So that's actually one of the first items on the agenda. So if anyone wants to speak, we would ask that you do that at the beginning of the meeting. And if you could please sign that, and that way we can make sure we give you the opportunity to speak. Also, just for some house cleaning, I'm going to send around this sign-in sheet. So if you are a member of the subcommittee, please be sure to sign in. And with that, I'll actually just go around. So obviously, we have a new superintendent who's co-chair, so Kenny Duver. So for his and mine also, if we could just go around and introduce ourselves for those who are members of the building subcommittee. And I'll just send this around, so I can start from my left. You can introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Erin Earl, chair of the school committee, and I am here today as the second school committee member in Rob Case's place.
And you just sign that, and that's it for the members, right? I'll go my right. And then you can go around and we're going to sign that, but you can introduce yourself. So.
Sure, yes. Kenny Duver, superintendent for the Kingstown School Department. It's been 1 week on the job. Looking forward to working with everyone. Excited to be here tonight and work on this plan with you.
I am Bob Mitchell. I am the interim assistant superintendent. I've been here since the middle of February.
I'm Tom Bryady. I am on the school committee and I am a member of the building subcommittee.
I'm David Flanagan. I'm the principal at the Wickford Middle School. I'm not an official member of the building committee. Perhaps.
Adam White, Director of Public Works.
I'm Jack Pye. I'm a community representative for the building committee. I actually worked on the high school one also.
Dante Marinaro, Department of Public Work. I'm a member of the subcommittee.
Joe Pizzatero, Director of Finance. By my name.
Kim Page, I'm the town council person who is the representative for the building committee.
Are there any other members of the building committee in the audience? I don't sure. I don't think so. Okay. And also, just for housekeeping, which is technology is great. So I am getting a text that we are not live streaming right now. They can't find the link.
No, we don't live stream.
You don't live stream? I did not know that. Okay.
No, it'll be recorded and posted in, I think, 2 business days.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So at that point, so again, I want to welcome everyone. We have while it's a brief agenda in items, it's going to be a lengthy agenda in quality of information that's going to be sent out. So we'll begin with public comment. Francis Slade.
Good evening. My name is Francis Slade. I'm a resident of this town, and I have been working on different problems with different sites that have been mentioned. I'm not here tonight to talk about the sites or the wetlands or the woods or any of those things. I'm here tonight to see and ask that we as a town can come together and make a good plan for all. What I mean is, I'd like to see 2 middle schools. One in Wickford, where the Wickford Middle School is presently, and make it grades 5 through 8. And do the same at Davisville Middle School. Make an addition to that school and make that also 5 to 8. This will alleviate a lot of your problems in the future with more children coming to this area to live. And of course, the neighborhoods are getting younger, not older. I also, the children's parents are so concerned about busing them on 403 and Route 4. This would give them a sense of security, knowing their children. We're going close to the school, which is Hamilton, that they've always gone to. And, this makes a big, big difference. I'm sure a lot still won't like those the 5th grade being in the middle school. But we all have to give a little. And as a resident, and I live in the Good L neighborhood, the plan for there was terrible. And I'm not even going to talk about it. But I'd like to see you all come together with a plan that everybody gets something good from it. And just make it our neighborhoods again. That's all that this town really wants. We don't need fighting between neighborhoods and people. We need to have this group make good decisions for all the children in this town. And bringing them all to the north end was not the good situation to put all these families into. I thank you, and I thank you for all the good work I know you all do.
Thank you. Robert Jones?
Thank you, Robert Jones, 63 Pheasant Run. Welcome, Dr. Duba, from the district. Last meeting, I made the point that you are the district's facilities, buildings, whatever you want to call yourself, subcommittee. I understand the middle school project is obviously of vast importance. That doesn't mean you need to ignore the rest of the district. Historically, the public was informed of projects that got done, projects that were scheduled, if the funding was there, all of that, during the CIP review and then the subsequent follow-up. It's as if you want the public to trust you, giving you $167 million, and yet one complaint you hear is that buildings aren't kept up. Please think about the entire district when you have your meetings. What's been going on? What's been getting fixed? What hasn't? What's being put aside? That was one of the points of having a formal CIP review that really was not done in this budget cycle, and a capital request to the town council, which also was not done. Even though at the March 1st meeting, the town manager made it very clear that the stage 2 cost was the responsibility of the school committee. Having said that, it's good to see the finance director here. I think you got a little complacent that in the past, the CO was also the finance director. Money drives a lot of your thinking and recommendations, so I hope he's a permanent part of your thing. Having said that, when it comes to this project, as I said before, stage 2 requires you to do a lot of viable alternatives. I don't know why there was the rush to judgment on a 5 to 8 middle school that all the working groups said was not the preferred alternative. The master plan, you should not call a master plan. It's a living document. It clearly stated that an interior assessment needed to be done, because one option is to refurbish all the schools as is. May not be the best option, but it's an option. There's an option of a 7 to 8 at Whitford Middle, and building out at some of the other elementaries, and either consolidating Forest Park, which has the highest FCI index, at Davisville Middle, or building something new at Quid and combining Quid thing. For a school committee that sort of prided itself on DEI, it's amazing that you're ignoring the majority of students in this district with this bond. What happens at the other schools? Where do the Title I students go? Even the admin building, you're going to continue to pay $100,000 and more every year here. You have to solve, if you're going to do a generational investment, all of the district's intermediate, short-term and intermediate needs. Not spend 167 and have a great super building, which has apparently a lot of issues to begin with, and then the rest of the district is starved for the next 15, 20 years. So please go back, don't chase bonuses, because one question for the OPM, you keep saying 20%. Where do you get 20%? Because there's 4 items you said, 2 that we don't qualify for, the other 2 we don't qualify for now. There is maybe buts, ands. So could we have a definitive statement, if you're getting 20%, exactly, does the district qualify for that based on the proposal as stated? Because Whitford Middle, Davisville Middle, FCIs do not meet the state standard, nor does it meet the capacity. For Perkins Eastman, I'd say, if you're gonna do the traffic study, could you please clarify for the public, when did you do it? Did you do it in June when basically there's no traffic? Because a real traffic study for the largest middle school in the state into a neighborhood residential area needs to be done when actually school's in session for a few periods to get a true traffic study. So again, please stop chasing bonuses. Do the right thing. Think of all the alternatives. If you're gonna build at Whitford, someone should be contacting the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission to ask. You're gonna need that for a stage 2 if you build at Whitford. If you can demolish it, go ahead and do it. Make a recommendation to ask them for that. So again, please take your time, stop chasing so-called bonuses, do the right thing for the entire district infrastructure so that our students have buildings that are equitable. Mission Cove has no gym, smaller cafeteria, neither does Forest Park. Make sure that it's teaching and learning for the next generation of students across all of this, as opposed to chasing one shiny little thing just because you think the state's gonna chip in an extra 10, 15 million, which again, I'm not gonna doubt isn't significant, but we've spent millions of dollars fixing the high school for something that was, right, not done 25 years ago. So take your time and get it right. Interest rates are gonna fall down in the future. Costs will come down in terms of that aspect. So just get it right for the community. Look at all the alternatives as opposed to chasing one solution that seems to have a lot of issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of things for the committee. Mr. Jones had mentioned something just for the committee. We did reach out to Rhode Island Historical Preservation Commission, and there will be some things that we would need to do if we were to demolish Whitford Middle School, but it can be done, especially with the issue that we've been dealt with. So it can be done. And also, please know, this is more for the town than the school. If we do abandon the Whitford Middle School site, then the possibility of demolishing Whitford Middle School lessens dramatically. And then the state law kicks in, and the state law is that we as a town then need to show how we do not make that into affordable housing. State law is very clear that if you abandon a school, that has to be considered for affordable housing. So I'm just speaking on behalf of the town. That's a real concern, that if we abandon that school, we cannot demolish it unless we're building another school at that site, and it does have to be considered for affordable housing. So I think that's something we all need to know, and we just found this out in the last 24 hours, so I just need you to know that. Next item is approval of the previous meeting minutes of May 31st and June 21. I'm going to ask for a motion to defer action on that because you have not had a chance to review those minutes. We'll have them for the next meeting. If I can have a motion to second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is the North Kingstown Middle School project update with the architect and the OPM. We have 3 subcategories: the review of the town council discussion relative to the current plan, review of the current proposed site, and discussion action of next steps. I'll briefly take the floor on the review of the town council discussion, then I'll ask the superintendent if there's anything that he would like to add, and then I think he would then like to turn it over for review of the current proposed site. As far as the review of the town council discussion, I took some notes and spoke with a few council members, and it seems like from that night, basically the council is asking that we includes the subcommittee, but also the school committee, so we're working as a team here, that there should be other town sites that we should consider, that the council is interested in the review of potentially 2 middle schools versus 1, with Whitford Middle School being an option for 1 based on the information that I just gave you, that the council would like to gather information from the school committee as to what their plans are for the elementary schools and other sites should we move forward, because they feel that's important for the public to know prior to the referendum. And also that it appears that the council had a lot of faith in both the current architect and the current OPM. And although we do have this master facilities plan that we should work off of, that we utilize their experience and their knowledge to help us with these next steps. That's a real brief summary of a very long meeting, but I feel that I hopefully have analyzed what I thought was a long meeting. I have a couple of council members here, so hopefully that's a somewhat brief but accurate description of what I think came from that night. The next item is a review of the current proposed site. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Sure. Yeah, so we know there was a lot of discussion on the current site at Quidnesset with many concerns regarding what was presented last time. And we know that at the town council meeting, what you just summarized was asked for us to look at. So last week, the administration had met with Perkins Eastman and Jacobs to share out those concerns, as well as to ask, what other properties do we have in town that we could consider developing a new middle school on, as well as if we did go back to having 2 middle schools versus 1 middle school, what would that look like? What would the possibility be of that? And so they're prepared tonight to share a presentation with the committee, looking at other lands that we do own that we could use for 1 middle school, as well as having 2 middle schools.
Okay. Can we get started, Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Moltz, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good to be here. Last time we were here was June 21st. It was a very interesting conversation. A lot of information was presented. We've got some new things to present tonight. As was mentioned, we're going to focus on the Davisville site. We're also going to focus on the Wigford middle school site, show you some options on that. Before I let my team get started, I want to introduce the team. I've got Tina Greco here with me. I'm Mike Berger in the back row, Robert Santos, I'm Joe Costa, and we've got Inga Knox from Jacobs. And so we're happy to give you some new information tonight. Mike?
Good evening, everyone.
If I may interrupt, Mike, just for 1 second. I think you said that we're only presenting on 2 options, which is the Davisville school, 1 combined middle school on Davisville site and 2 middle schools on their respective sites. We did look at other sites. We did look at Stony Lane. We did look at other available sites in the town, and these options were deemed to be the most suitable for a school this size. Because the superintendent mentioned that there are other sites. I don't know if there are any vacant sites, but that were available or well known to us. We weren't aware of any, but the ones we selected were the most suitable locations for the program. If you may add anything to that?
No, we were looking at sites that we do own. We're not aware of any vacant land that could be used. We were looking at the current sites that we do have, that we have schools on, that could be used for a middle school. But looking at the current school properties that we have, or those properties, what you've prepared for us is to look at the Davisville Middle School site as a possible site for 1 new middle school, and then looking at the Wigford Middle School site and the current Davisville Middle School site as having 2 new middle schools there.
Great. Okay, this is a different format, so hopefully it goes smoothly. So option A, we're going to look at 2 options. Option A is going to be 1 consolidated school, so that's 1,200 students on a site. Option B, which we'll run through, are two middle schools, so 2 600-student schools on 2 separate sites. So we'll walk through option A. Option A, the consolidated school, seems to have fit nicely on the Davisville site while maintaining the existing school operating during construction. This would be grades 5 to 8. All these options include 5th grade, I should mention, so every option you see tonight includes 5th grade. Option A is approximately 1,200 students and around 180,000 square feet for a brand new school. So taking a look at Davisville site, which everyone in this room is probably very familiar with, there's a lot going on the map here, a lot of colors. There are some environmental challenges on the site as well. There are wetlands, there are some flood zones that currently exist. We do have to verify these, learning from what we learned from the Quidnesset site. So if this was a site that we're going to move forward with, we have to quickly explore and verify the wetlands and the flood zones and any other challenges on the site. Hit it one more time. You can see here, this blue line is the information that we have right now. That is the wetlands delineation. So from there, there'd be an offset for where we can put the building. A lot of this area in here is previously disturbed wetlands, so existing fields, et cetera, can stay within that buffer zone. There's also a flood delineation that cuts into the site, not around the existing school, but basically sits over about half of the existing fields within the site. This is something that we're familiar with. We've built, actually 2 of our projects right now are under construction that are built within flood zones, so it's something that we can design around, raise the building. We haven't dug into that level yet, what that exactly means, but basically have to bring the building up a couple feet above the flood zone, so it's something doable. The wetlands is something that we obviously want to stay away from, but flood zones is something we can work with. It's a fantastic public amenity that you have with McGinn Park, with your basketball courts, your tennis courts, your skate park, and some recent improvements. You do have 5 nice athletic facilities out here, and the plan is to maintain all the site amenities that you have currently on site. You do have baseball, a softball, little league, football, soccer, and then kind of a short baseball field on site. There are some slopes, steep slopes, which we have indicated that we obviously have to work around. There's a cell tower that we're aware of that currently sits on the site. So some stuff we have to work around and investigate a little bit more if this is to be the site. There's 2 parcels on the site. One is dedicated, it's about a little over about 9.5 acres. It's dedicated for the school, and the rest of it is town-owned property. So to build on the town property, there's a process that the town will have to go to get approval to locate the school on portion of the town property, and then relocate a couple of the athletic fields onto this the site over here. Go to the next site, next page rather. So as I mentioned, we're well aware of the importance of athletic fields for the town, but also for the middle school, especially consolidating the students. What we have here, and this is again, this is a high-level first pass. We're going to take, if this is a site, we're going to really dig into this. Take a look at the environmental challenges, take a look at a building footprint that works really well, site circulation, safety, phasing, all the stuff that goes into this. But at first pass, it looks like we'll be able to maintain these 3 fields on the right-hand side all the way through construction. From day one, these fields, as well as everything up at towards School Street, those site amenities will be maintained during construction. These 2 fields down here, the baseball and softball or Little League, I think I might be getting those screwed up. These would be relocated and available when the construction is finalized. So we're going to go to the next slide. But as you can see, these two ball fields slide over here, and actually the orientation will be improved. Actually, baseball fields kind of will be northeast orientation. Currently, they're both south and southwest. So by relocating these, it improves the orientation of the ball fields, and then you maintain all of your athletic fields on site. And this is a placeholder. It has been vetted out as approximately the size of a consolidated 1,200 student school. The shape and how it works into the site will be something that we'll continue to develop, but that is a realistic placeholder at this point. So kind of stepping back and looking at some of the opportunities on the site and some of the challenges. The way that this footprint of the school is nestled into the site nicely, it misses the wetlands that we'll have to have verified. It does sit partially within some of that flood zone, which we'll work around and mitigate. These athletic fields on the east side remain untouched. These 2 fields are relocated over here. The park up the street is not touched. We're actually taking the parking, we have our landscape architects here, but the idea is taking the parking and actually pulling it closer to the center of the site, which actually works really nicely for access to the fields now. So currently, this parking lot, which will remain, is somewhat remote from some of those fields. So it's actually making some improvements for the town fields and amenities. The way that the building is set up is this portion here are really the big box, your gym, your cafeteria, your auditorium, your band, your administration at the front door. And then this piece in the back would be your academic wings, which something we typically like to do is put the academic classrooms, we mentioned last time, on really the quiet portion of the site. And it's nestled nicely kind of within this existing wetlands forest. So the adjacency to any neighborhood is 500 to 600 feet, away, which is really nice. It's situated nicely on the site. The existing entrance drive would be utilized, for an entrance and exit onto the site. And there are opportunities, not saying this is the solution, but there are opportunities to extend the entrance through McGinn Park and improve that and create another entrance or exit. Again, trying to create that separation of parent and vehicular, bus and vehicular drop-off and arrival. So there's some really great opportunities on the site that we see. And it sets itself up nicely. You can see the footprint of the existing school. So during phasing, during the construction of the school, obviously this school remained fully functional. So we see opportunities for contractor access, through the park. The park would have access to these fields, and a construction zone here, really isolated from the existing school. So the existing school can function exactly how it does today, having parents and visitors and buses accessing the current curb cut over here. Anything else the team want to, anything that we missed? Okay, we'll come back to this if you'd like. Option B, so this is the two separate smaller schools. We should mention the footprint that you just saw was around 1,200 students. It's around 180,000 square feet. Once you split the two schools, there will be a savings in square footage. You're reducing the number of classrooms, obviously because they're half the number of students, but you're still going to have a gym, you're still going to have a cafeteria, you're still going to have music, you're still going to have art, administration. So you're not cutting that number in half. So there is a savings in square footage, but there's still decent sized schools. Each school approximately 122,500 square feet each, down from 180,000 square feet. So the total goes up to around 245,000 square feet versus 180,000 square feet combined schools. Again, grades 5 to 8, 600 students each school. So this time we'll start with Wickford. And that's great news about the historic nature of the building, that there's an opportunity to remove the existing Wickford Middle School if there was a school to be located on this site. This is a much smaller site. In total, it's just over 12.25 acres. There are some slopes off to in the northeast corner. It drops significantly, around 40 feet where the athletic fields are. Just for reference, it's around 25 feet in this corner, around 30 feet in this corner. So there are some challenges on the eastern portion of the site. You do have baseball, softball, and a multi-purpose field that do overlap each other. Oh, should mention, there are wetlands in the vicinity. Looks like there's a little bit over in this corner, so we'd have to verify the wetlands there and the setback limitations on the site here. But everything else, even the flood zone, obviously sits on top of a hill, are off the site. So that's a bonus for this site. So we took a look at an overlay, and again, this is a footprint. We zoomed in a little bit so that the footprint looks a little bit bigger, but this is a smaller school. This is approximately 122,500 square feet, 600 students. It is a compact, really efficient plan and a placeholder on the site. What it illustrates is that even with a consolidated smaller school on the site, very efficient, compact plan. Actually, we're even looking at a portion of it as 4 stories, possibly, hoping to get that down to 3. It eats up a significant amount of the footprint. Also note that this school must remain operational. So this entrance drive, which runs around the existing site, would have to be maintained during construction. So the school most likely will fit in this location here. Even when you take the school down, the existing school down, you have a very limited area for athletic fields, so that you're not going to be able to replicate what was on the Davisville site or even what's currently on this site when all is said and done. We are showing some circulation opportunities for parents and bus, service, emergency access. We're showing some parking blocks. Now, these parking blocks have to be verified. We're not even certain that we can get the required number of parking on the site. That would be the next step. So what this illustrates is that much smaller site, some site challenges. Even with a smaller school, it's a significant challenge on this site. Back to Davisville, we already saw the analysis. The entire site would function just like it does in option A. Option B, it's a smaller footprint. Most likely we can go with a 2-story building, which is nice because the academic wings get shorter and can fit nicely on the site out of the flood zone. So it fits nicely on Davisville. Obviously, if the larger school fit, a smaller school could fit as well, with the same circulation, athletic fields, and amenities as well. With that,
So you want to talk to the comparative slide, or want to start
Sure,
there?
this is more of a summary, so we started looking at pros and cons of each of the options. That's very high level, I think it needs a little bit more in-depth review of each, and that these are the sites or options that are considered. We'll dive into those a little bit more in terms of what it does to ride reimbursement, because the two options, the option B, we will lose some of that reimbursement. There is also scheduling concerns with option B. There is some funding concerns with option B because it will likely, we think, we'll need to do an analysis. I don't want to say it will be more than 167. I don't know if it will be, it's feasible to fit within the 167, I think, but I can't speak to that because we did not do in-depth analysis of that yet. It's advisable to stay within the pre-approved, not pre-approved, but within the $167 million amount that we have, that has been circulated, and that's on the ballot as well. Option A, it may require a 3 or 4 story classroom wing, which we'll have to look into. Both options have site and environmental concerns. I think we'll need to dive into which one is more or less concerning. There is definitely some cost savings in option A because we might be, well, we will be reusing certain fields, which is a benefit. But then there is a cost in terms of building on flood zones, so we'll have to do that analysis if that option is in fact favored or the committee wants us to look into it further. Some of the benefits of option A, will provide the additional parking for the McKinn Park. We did put that it's less environmental challenges than option B. However, that all needs to be verified in more detail. What else am I? Option A also provides less disruption during construction because the building will be set a little bit further away from the existing building. The existing building can stay comfortably in operation with a separation, of course. Let's see. Some of the pros of option B is, of course, we're maintaining the existing site, we're maintaining the locations, the bus routes, that's maintained, which is nice. Of course, building and designing and planning for 2 separate buildings is more intensive than it is for one. However, it could be done. And there's also less sports fields, at least in the Woodford location. Not so much in Davisville, so they're not going to be equal to each other, so one will be less. One thing about option A too is that, well, in comparison to the old site location, is the traffic is probably a lot better managed here. The bus routes and all that has to do with building on the existing middle school site rather than redeveloping a brand new site.
Just for that slide, in case you had want to tweak it, so obviously there are there are very little pros to option B. There's a lot of cons to option B, but just from the town point of view, I just want to put this out there as cons. One of the cons would be the fact that the town would have less fields.
To option B.
To option A. So the school would have, option A works for the school and the children because option B has less fields. But then the town is going to have to find more fields for Little League because the school is taking over. We can easily find alternatives to that. As long as we have funding, we have Signal Rock, which needs to be renovated, so we can, but I'm just saying, what's that?
Building at Whitford.
That's right, yeah, exactly, so we can find, that's right, we can find the areas, we can definitely not worried about that, but that is an area. Option A, of course, we still have the travel issue, or option B may resolve that. And please, I think you did a great job with option A. Option B concerns a lot of people, I'm sure. And then, of course, from the town point of view, again, being a little selfish, is that if we go with option A, then, the town then has a challenge with option B, because now we have an obligation to potentially preserve that building and require some housing units.
Only if the school vacates
Oh,
that space.
Correct, that's right.
Because we might not,
That would be wonderful.
so.
That's for option B.
That would be great if you were.
That's if we went with option A, then the
Exactly.
option,
Yes.
then Wakeford
But then if the
becomes
school wasn't
major, yeah.
vacating it, that's a wonderful.
Yeah, that hasn't, that would be
Yeah, that's
the
great.
decision.
And I only mention that just for your list of pros and cons. Other than that, that's not, I'm just throwing that out there. Not affecting.
Right, which we
Can I
can
ask-
include all of those.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
No, that's what I anticipated.
Option B, budget constraints, higher cost to build 2 schools, higher operating costs. You got $167 million on the ballot right now. Is this gonna be more than that?
They don't know.
Well, I'd like some insight as to what you think.
Tom, the key number is the gross square footage, so
Right.
it's 180,000 versus 245,000 square foot, so you're talking about a delta of about 65,000 square foot. And 2 site development packages, so the original 167 was for 180,000 square foot building, so that's what that number was formed based on.
I kind of figured that, but I wanted to get it out there. We're talking about a lot more money.
It's a lot more square footage, and
Right.
a lot more building.
Right.
That's what it is.
And I think that, Tom, that's why we were, I think there's pros and cons to one consolidated middle school versus 2, and the building subcommittee and the school committee have talked through that. But I think also a factor is the long-term operational cost of running 2 schools versus 1 school as well, and we haven't.
You're absolutely right about that.
I think that, again, I think that the long-term operational, that definitely will be an issue, but hopefully that's something that we could address. I think that what Tom is bringing up, I think is a real challenge, because as you know, I'm just saying this publicly for the record, if we ever went with an option that, C, D, E, that resulted in a bid of more than 167 million, we cannot move forward. So, and that, with having Johnston, basically Johnston has the same exact issue where their bond question, the bid can be much greater than the bond question, so.
On both of these, you have that a con is that they could be more than 3 stories. Why is that a con?
Elevator.
But you're going to have an elevator with 3 stories, so is it
It's
just that it's
costly.
higher?
It's
Okay.
a cost.
Okay.
Do you want to speak to 3 stories versus?
It's also an operational discussion, I think we obviously like to talk to the administration and faculty if supervising, 2 versus 3 versus 4 stories in a middle school setting. It's something we've done before, but if we can keep it at 2 stories or 3 stories, it might be perceived as a more favorable plan. So we're trying to be conservative right now, understanding and not knowing all the facts about, verifying some of the facts about the constraints of the site. So our footprint is a realistic footprint until we know more information, and then as we move forward.
Please log in through the Google Home app.
Then we'll move forward and take a look at different building footprints, different options, and see if we can get away with less floors. Right.
The other thing that you guys will increase the fee to do both buildings versus 1 building.
Will it cost more to design 2 buildings? I
Well,
think
it's 2
that's
buildings and much bigger square footage, so the answer would be yes, most likely.
Construction costs will be higher as well, because you're building 2 instead of
No,
1.
I understand the construction cost, but I am also considering the other cost,
Everything goes up.
Everything
which
goes
is
up.
a double, I wouldn't say a double fee, but it will increase the fee that the whole project will require.
Back to the site real quick, can you explain to everyone how you determined the wetland edge right now, or what's apparent on the picture, because once it's actually in the field, as we've now seen on the other site, just describe real quick like how you put the images on for viewing purposes only.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, we use the local GIS information. We check the FEMA flood maps. And just for the record, for the GIS on the Quid site, Vanessa site, it's not flagged, it's not noted. So we also have our consultants that have taken a look at a first pass, and they have some existing information on Davisville. Obviously, that information will have to be verified, but we have some decent information that's much more detailed. So all the information that we have now is replicated here, and we also.
It's also on this. It's important that it's not in one area.
Yes, it's a good point. So the Quidnessa portion of the site that we're proposing building on was undeveloped, a wooded area, very little information on this. All the area that we're proposing touching on Davisville has been developed. There's information on it, there's data on it. It's disturbed land already. We're not proposing going into the woods, which is all flagged as wetlands already. So we feel a little more comfortable going into this one. But again, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. Things will change a little bit once it's officially flagged.
Of course, yeah. We feel there's enough of a buffer.
Making sure.
I don't think they're gonna find. Hopefully, they'll find a wetlands right in the middle. But
well, no, but at least everybody now will understand that if there is a change or a shift or a rotation of a building or something like that, that this is just a first look at the property.
Exactly. Yes.
Can you, in your professional opinion, can you briefly address not Whitford, but Davisville, the cost of renovation versus new? Okay. And by experience though, or just, do you think that and if you can't answer, it's okay. Do you think it's equitable? Do you think that renovation is more expensive than new? Do you think just the opposite, or you just don't want to hold up on answering that, which is fine either way?
Extensive renovation, first of all, the building, there is a need for swing space. So that's item number one. That's a cost and that's a space. Is there space somewhere where all these students can, 600, how many students right now in any of those schools can go to while that extensive renovation happens? So that's one. So that's logistics, not so much cost. Extensive renovation to an older building, trying to, triggers ADA compliance, accessibility, and energy codes compliance. So renovating a building and making it compliant tends to cost more. Now, I'm not going to put my job on the line for that. However, that's just a general kind of blanket statement for that. There needs to be an investigation done, of course. It's easy to do. You compare costs of A to B. It depends on what state and shape the building is in right now. So it's an individual building. Another thing is fitting in the program, right? So I have a note to talk about educational program because we talk about building and site and how well it fits, but at the end of the day, you also need to think about that educational program that the district is trying to achieve by building this new middle school or 2 middle schools. And it is more difficult sometimes to fit the educational program to older buildings because they're not designed that way. They're not made for that type of approach. And I think you guys can speak more to that. Needless to say, anything is possible. We just need to look into it. And if that is direction that we're given, we'll have to do a little bit more searching. But swing space, I would say, is number one priority. Is how in-depth that renovation has to be, and can we keep the school operational while we're renovating? Possible, but that's distracting to the education. So it's logistically we have to look into it. I personally have worked in schools that are being renovated while in session, and it's just another thing to look into.
So we don't have a cost estimate of what it would cost the district to renovate DMS currently?
I don't have that cost estimate. I don't know if anyone else does.
One of the challenges of the existing school is that the size of spaces are really not compatible with today's program. So take, for instance, a typical classroom. Typical classroom at Davisville, I think, is in 650 range, something like that. And our classrooms are in the 850 range. So you either do two things. You either knock down every wall and reconfigure the block, or you simply construct a new block with the right module and then either repurpose or take down the other space. The existing school at Davisville is about 97,000 square feet, so we're actually doubling the size of the building. And when you double the size of an existing building, there are some natural inefficiencies of what you can do. Corridors sometimes are longer, maybe there's a intermediate space or things like that. So you lose the efficiency that you would have in a brand new purpose-built 180,000 square foot building. And then, as Inga mentioned, one of the biggest challenges, of course, is disruption. You're going to be either moving kids to portables, or you're going to be creating your own swing space. And what happens is the construction duration gets much, much longer. So a new building, on average, takes about maybe 2 years to build. Think of doubling that span from 2 years to 4 years, because you're building in pieces and you have to keep the school operational. And oftentimes, middle school students will never see the completed building, because by the time they get through the program, they live with the sort of disruption and the dust and the noise, but they never get the use and the benefit of a brand new school. And I've seen that many, many times. But the biggest challenge is just the fact that the size of the rooms, and even the big spaces like gymnasiums and things like that, are just not the right size. So you come up, the design team will come up with, do we live with a smaller space, or do we knock it down, or we try to expand it? And all those things are challenging and expensive to do. Every contractor wants to be in and out of the project as quickly as possible. No one likes to commit themselves for 4 or 5 year construction projects. They just don't like it, and consequently the prices go up.
Construction cost goes up too.
Yeah.
Building in the occupied space, mostly because of you have to work with testing, right? So if the space is occupied, say even we moved kids on site, but kept some kids in the buildings, and then we separated that somehow, and we did phasing approach to this. Testing, construction has to stop. Something goes on, construction has to stop. We're done after hours construction costs more. So there is a lot more logistically that goes into it. And then you're looking at 167 million. It's a substantial amount of money for a district. And what might happen is that basically the educational program might start to suffer because of all these other things. But again, we can look into everything.
On the option B, it says, since fifth grade will be included in the plan to increase capacity. Supposing fifth grade wasn't, and so the capacity would be lower, would that make any kind of a difference? 100 students per school, or?
It would be a smaller building, right? So you're
Yeah, but
taking,
it wouldn't make a huge.
No, it wouldn't make a huge difference. I mean, you have the same challenges associated, but typically the fifth grade is about 300 students. So of the 1,200, they're about a quarter of the population. If you split 300 in half, it's 150 at school. So it's not that big of a change. But it would make a little bit of a difference.
I mean, Davisville works, right? It works with the biggest, appears to work with the largest school, so it'll work with a smaller school. The challenge is Whitford. You're still going to need the gym, you're still going to need a calf. Again, it just gets incrementally a little bit smaller. Classroom gets a little smaller, maybe a lops off a floor without the students. But you're not going to fit another baseball field or soccer field. So
small.
Does it help? It's a move in the right direction, but will it, create that parity between a Davis Middle School and a Woodford Middle School? It will not.
Because I've always loved the Woodford Middle School. When they play together, I do love umpiring. I've played hundreds of games of Davisville and Wickford. It was always a nice thing to have, townwide rivalry.
If I can share 2 concerns that I and others had at the beginning before you came on board, and it may not be something for you to address, but because again, I think that what you've done here is a great step in the right direction. So we all appreciate that. 2 concerns at the very beginning, and again, you may not be able to handle this. One was of course travel. So being that this isn't in the center of town, and being that we are a very large town per square mile, we're not a large town population-wise. We are one of the larger square miles. That the 5th graders I get this a lot of it gets at the markets and whatnot, is, great plan, but 5th grade is going to be in the bus for 40, 45, 50 minutes. And so, I'm not sure if you can address that. The second issue is similar to what Jack had just said, and that is that we're still a small town. about to build the largest middle school in all of Rhode Island, but we're still a small town. And by building a large middle school, half the kids will no longer be able to play baseball because they have one less team. Half the kids will no longer play basketball, they have one less team. Half the kids will not be able to go drama and band, you have one less group. Because RIDE will not allow you, I can promise you, I've had experience in this, RIDE will not allow you to have two schools in one school. We'll beg and we'll fight and we'll yell, but when it's all done, it will be North Kingstown Middle School. They will not allow Wickford and Davisville under one roof. So you will have less baseball teams, less basketball teams, less band, less drama, less chess club, less everything, because you can only have one school. I don't know if you have any experience in either of those questions, because I know that was somewhat of a hot topic back in February or March.
I can't answer those. Are
I wasn't sure if you build schools.
Those are really operational, and
Okay, I know travel is more operational.
I think the question for the town is, what is our priorities, right? And how much do we wanna spend on what, right? And so, and I don't have, I go back and forth on what's best for the town and where we should put it and all of those sort of things. But I think, what we have to decide as a town, and the building subcommittee needs to recommend to the school committee, and then the school committee brings to the town council, is what do we think is the best to educate students in this town and what's gonna get us there? And then also, how much does the town wanna invest in the schools? Because obviously, we're talking about two of our schools, but there's more, and moving to this option, it goes back to not dealing with the challenges at the Quinnesset school, having the open walls and the security issues and different things. So that'll be a different investment that we'll need to consider down the road of how we're gonna work and upgrade that elementary school and different things. And so, if we're gonna go to two options, because in our town, 2 middle school baseball teams is really important, then we just have to know that that's gonna come with a price tag, and that is what we're gonna have to consider and do. And I don't know if that's the right choice or the wrong choice, but it's definitely something that I think we need to consider as this subcommittee and then the other groups. It's kind of what are our priorities and how much do we wanna invest. But I think the one thing that I know for sure is that we have to do something. Wickford Middle School particularly, is not, I don't think, serving our students well and allowing our town to have a good space to educate our students. And so, there's no perfect option, but I definitely think we need to figure out a way to move forward, because that building is definitely not serving us anymore.
And I can say that to answer some of that is that, I don't know what the priorities are for everyone, but I can say that 2 baseball teams isn't important, 2 basketball teams is important, but that is part of education. That's just as important as math. 2 chess clubs, 2 bands, whatever it may be. So by spending $170 million and you're taking away opportunity for our children, it's just something that we have to overcome. Again, it's not a baseball team. It's not, while the rivalry's great, we have North Kingstown, Wickford, Little League, we survive, and so we'll be okay. But I'm worried about taking away services to our children, and whether it could be almost anything. But again, I think it's a deal breaker.
I think we have to think about what are we gaining though. What opportunities are we gaining? How are we able to help special needs students in different ways? How are we able to have better accessibility? How are we, so it's that there's going to be a give and take each way, but just something to think about with the different options.
So I have a question. I apologize that I don't know this answer, and maybe this has been done and I just don't know yet. So as we're talking about priorities and what's important to people, have we looked at, as a town, what those priorities are? Maybe this was done during the master facilities plan, and maybe it wasn't, but surveying people as to what those priorities that you both are talking about, and what's most important to the people in town as we look at building and renovating our schools. I hear the concerns, I hear the opportunities that you're both talking about, and I just wonder, has that been done to really hear from everyone as to what those priorities are and moving forward and looking at how we are renovating our schools in the district?
There was some discussion in the master plan about that.
Okay.
The response was really minimal. There wasn't very much. I mean, I think it was because it was so amorphous or out there that nobody, there's a lot more response now than there was 3 months ago. And so that's just a reality.
I think we also have to remember it was during the global pandemic.
Right.
When we're, this has been happening 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 now. And so I definitely think, we've really been trying, I think, to listen and hear, and we get a lot of correspondence and a lot of things about our priorities. I don't think there's been a townwide, survey kind of thing, but there's definitely been ample opportunity, I think, for citizens to participate and communicate what's important to them and what their thoughts are on the different plans and et cetera.
Can I just address a question to the Perkins team and also to Inga? One of the cons that you've listed is prevent potential environmental issues. I know that's been a topic of discussion, but I don't know what the reality is. I know Ralph has shared some ideas on that. I've heard it from town council members. Do you know anything about what those issues are at this point?
Well, the Wickford side.
We don't know.
Don't know.
So my understanding would be is that just as we identified the Quinnesset site and then we did the studies that happened, the same process would have to happen if we determine a new site. And potential challenges might come up that we are unaware of, and then.
It's the current unknown, so.
Yeah.
We spoke about that today.
But you place potential environmental issues at Whitford. There's a reason for that. I'm just wondering what it is.
Well, we put it as well here because all the sites, like I said, all the sites had potential environmental issues, wetlands, flood zones, anything else that might come up. We don't know.
So it might not be contamination, it could be environmental,
Right.
other natural.
I have heard, and I don't know if it's just rank rumor or not, that Whitford may have landfill issues in the athletic field area, and that's a potential building site. So that's why I'm trying to dig into that a little bit. But apparently nobody's really okay.
There's talk from the old swamp Yankees in town that used to be a car dump at one point. I don't know how far down it was, but.
That's some of the work that we'll have to do to know, doing the study.
Yeah, he most certainly did say that. Yes.
I doubt it.
First person to hit the view, it gets to keep it.
We were looking at that as a public safety complex. We heard the same exact thing. We did some research, could not find any justification, so what we decided internally, this was Adam's idea really, is that should we have gone forward with that site for that, or even for this, we would just do some random borings.
It's a random
borings to find out what's underneath, so.
All right.
So we felt that, well, you could miss something, at least it was a good idea, and again, that was Adam's idea, so. So we were looking at that as public safety, so we would probably recommend the same thing for middle school.
One thing about keeping 2 middle schools and having to hit the 167 is that once we start diving into all these items and the design and the program, the educational program and the programming of the building and the facilities that each school will get lesser or smaller or not as expensive. The net zero might be out of the question that we were targeting before because that's a cost. Some of those things might have to give because of the 2 buildings and the need to fit within the budget.
Have you guys talked about a single middle school with renovations to the other middle school? Our immediate need, I believe.
I don't think anyone asked. And this is tricky for us because the school committee actually hasn't seen this. The building committee's met, you met, and then you met again. And the school committee hasn't given any direction on any of this. So we'll be absorbing at the school committee level all the information from your 2 meetings tomorrow. But I don't believe that was a directive from you all, right?
No.
I just didn't know if internally there were conversations about your immediate need, which is the Whitford Middle School, as a new school, and then potential renovations or additions at the other school, which isn't as.
So it's in the conversations that we've had that we I think the direction that we were going towards is providing sort of equal facilities to the 2 middle schools, if there are 2 middle schools, so that the entire district gets the same. No one gets prioritized, if you will, one or the other. However, if one school needs more, then maybe that is the reason, but then they're getting a new building and the other district the other side may or may not get the same new building, but that certainly, we did not investigate that option.
Is there a major cost in destruction? If you have to knock down Woodford Middle School and Davisville, after the other ones are built, does that become a major cost? The
Demolition and removal.
removal of the old buildings or?
That would have been factored into the original.
Correct, demolition.
That was covered in the original 167,
Oh,
but
yes.
there is a significant cost to demolishing buildings of this vintage, right? There's some hazardous material in those buildings, they're generally built, very, very robustly, and disposal costs for buildings is very expensive nowadays, so there is a cost for demolition, that's a fact of any project.
That has a building on it. That has a building.
Yes, most sites.
We've exhausted our questions, I guess, we're not done, but I guess then we can jump right to the next item, which I think we already have, is just for the building subcommittee to talk about what we think the next step should be. And I'll defer to the superintendent, or also the two school committee members. I mean, maybe, we digest this and set up another meeting, and because if you have a school committee meeting tomorrow night, you have a council meeting Monday night, that's one of the reasons why we rushed this meeting. We wanted it to take place before both meetings. And so we could just digest it and maybe see if we get direction from the school committee and or town council, and then schedule something after the council meeting on the 17th. And I just threw that out there, but
I don't think we have to go back to the council until August, if I remember correctly.
that is correct. Yeah. But again, maybe we have time to put something on the agenda if they wanted to digest something, and give us some direction. One last thing, this may be helpful to everybody. I don't know if I wrote it down. I did. So we think that the deadline to get something on the ballot for November would be on or about September 18th. That's really pushing it. The Board of Elections is already asking us for dates now, but we know that legally they can't ask us for anything prior to the 18th. So the bottom line is that we need to figure out whether we're moving forward on a November referendum before Labor Day. And that's one heavy agenda item for all of us. So, and after that, if we didn't make that, it doesn't mean the project is scrapped. It means that now we're looking at a 2024 special election. In order to meet the bonuses, it would have to be sometime in February, March, or April. So it still could happen. Once again, I'm talking more from my individual basis. I have nothing to back this up. But I think there's a lot of us who would love to see this on in November, because in November there's a lot of projects going on statewide, and so people will be more apt to be paying attention, saying we know there's an election in November. You have middle schools being built all over Rhode Island, you have a congressional race in District 1, there'll just be a lot of attention towards an election happening in November. And my point is that pass or fail, you want as many people to come out as possible. And I think you may get that. You may get it in March too, but I'm just talking that, so again, I could be way off on that. That's just my personal opinion.
Can we discuss without making a recommendation?
Absolutely.
Would it make sense, seeing that we have 2 new sites, to start with some type of field work, outlining the actual wetlands and maybe doing some test borings to take care of some of the concerns?
We could do that.
Yes. The answer is yes.
I think that would have to be the next step, so that we know that we can even use this land. Right? We need to know if this land is usable and that we can put.
Well, and that it's better than the Knesset site. Like that's, I know that there's only 2 options up here. I know that there are a lot of concerns with the Knesset site, but also is option A or B better than the original option that the building subcommittee put forward? So I think that's the question too, is because I know that site wasn't as desirable and there's some challenges there, of course, but are there less challenges than the 2 that are in front? I think is the question too.
And we have done that comparison as well. We started it, but I think this meeting was more to concentrate on new locations, so we can definitely continue that investigation.
And simultaneously, is there something that we can help this project along with by, and again, I don't know how we would do it in such a short timetable, but looking to make sure that there aren't any other sites that we're missing. I've had planning look at it, but it's just, I don't know.
How many acres do you need to build a school of this size? If the one consolidated middle school, if we had just, Ralph said it's a big town, how many acres would you want? No worries.
Hold on a second, because we look at the quid site.
Quid originally was 18 with quids, yeah. Yep,
Was it 18?
18 developers.
Okay, there you go, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's just under 18, which is developable. And
That would be the goal.
And none of them are showing tonight, but we could fit everything, all the fields, parking, the consolidated school. So anything less than 18 is gonna be a serious challenge. So you're looking at, what are things under 13?
18 acres.
On a tricky.
No, it's about it. I want to explore options.
18 acres, right smack in the middle.
Yeah, of course.
No wetlands.
25 acres.
No neighborhoods around.
No neighborhoods.
In the ocean state.
You got it. I'll call you tomorrow.
In the ocean state.
That's right.
If there are any sites that anyone can think of, we can definitely develop them, we just don't.
Of course. I think that's, I mean, again, that's a good recommendation for, if the building committee would like to see them continue working on that over the next couple of weeks as a both a school committee and a council meet, which I think works to our advantage.
I would just be, if the building committee wants that, I would maybe have you all, I would recommend officially voting and recommending it to the school committee, because that'll have a cost associated to it to do that. And if, you know, with keeping on timeframes and whatnot, if that's the direction the building subcommittee wants to go, and that I would recommend making an official thing that could come to us, because we do have it on our agenda for tomorrow that we could take some business actions on it, but I would recommend that.
Well, would the better recommendation be to pick the original, to basically come up with three different options? You go with the original plan that was presented to us before, you decide on A or B, or you look for a new site. You know, would that be a better way of going out about it and asking the school committee that you're either looking at, or some reiteration of that thereof, rather than, I mean, we could continue to throw out ideas, and I'm not sure if it will get us to move forward. Would it be better to say, do we like the ideas that we have and want to stick with them, or do we want to go in a new direction? That might be what might be in terms of moving things along for the school committee. Is that, and this is a question, okay? So I'm asking folks of what do you think, just in terms of time and what we have, what is the best way of using our time to make sure that we're using it efficiently, rather than just keep on throwing out more and more ideas?
So based on that, I would be looking for direction for both the school committee, for our architect, for our project manager. I think that I would love to see the building committee entertain a motion or action that we, at this point, put a halt on all work on the Quinnesset site, and that we begin looking elsewhere. And that we have option A and B in front of us. There's two options is elsewhere. But I think the building committee, we could send and we have two school committee members here, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, if you do that, I would just recommend, so that because the school committee would have to approve that, and so what I would need the basis. I would recommend to send the basis for that. Based on the fact that X, Y. I would want to make sure that you all have like the information to give to the school committee, because again, we haven't seen it officially. We've obviously watched your meetings, but we haven't had a conversation at the school committee level about what their level of entertaining the site or not is. And so, I'm curious to see old option A versus new option A and what the pros and cons of those might be. Because I don't know that from off the top of my head.
I understand. I just know that, again.
Aaron, when you say old option A, you talk about option A for Quinnesset?
Yeah, because the school committee hasn't officially had a recommendation from the building committee to vacate that, and so if you are going to recommend that, I would definitely make sure that you have the rationale behind that will allow the school committee to make that decision officially.
Can I just ask you folks, has anybody done anything with regard to Quinnesset since our last meeting?
Well, I was not here, but I believe there is an option C that was entertained to the Quinnesset.
I was here for the presentation.
That fits the athletic fields, or there's some better athletic program than what has been seen on the 21st. We have that here.
Yeah, prior to us being asked to stopped, studying QuickSight. We took another look at a consolidated plan, very similar to what you've seen on the Davisville site. A single school, and we're able to fit the first pass needs some development with our landscape architects over there. It does fit the 3 athletic fields that were required. On the eastern side, we have a baseball field and a multi-purpose field, soccer field. On the western side, you have a softball field with the school and required parking. So it's a snug fit, but we're able to, at first blush, we're able to, at this level.
But you still have all those wetlands in the middle.
We're working around the wetlands. There's one point where will require to cross wetlands, but we still have the issues of the neighborhood and the traffic circulation through the neighborhoods as well.
In your professional opinion, if we were going to go with one consolidated middle school, would the Davisville or the Quinnesset site be the better site?
From what we know right now,
yes,
we feel that Davisville has a little more wiggle room to pivot to anything that we might uncover. It's on a school named School Street. Doesn't get any better than that. Can argue traffic. It has great amenities for the town. We're maintaining the amenities, the athletic fields. So there's some really nice opportunities.
Which would let me go back to
the caveat being from what you know now, because you've from what we knew 3 months ago, Quinnesset was the place.
Well,
Look,
Quinnesset was the place to do pre-feasibility, right?
Well,
like that's part of the process, unfortunately.
What I know now, and I say this with a lot of respect because I really came into this process believing that Quinnesset was the right place. I think that project is on life support at this point. And I don't see it being viable. I don't think we can get voters to vote for it. And that's a concern. If I thought that we could, I might have a different point of view. I'd like to know more about the wetland issue or the environmental issues at Davisville and whether or not because it seems to me that project might make more sense for us in terms of money, access to athletic fields, and also providing the students of this community with a top quality middle school.
And I'd just like to add that we don't have a lot of time from now until
10 weeks.
September of having the town council get approval to have the bonds, have the vote.
The bonds.
Have the vote, right, but we need approval from the town council for the vote to actually happen.
So that's exactly right.
So that needs to happen. So we don't have a lot of time from now until then. And I think with the amount of time we have, we need to spend that time wisely on the properties that we know we have available that are feasible to build on. And I know I'm the new person here. I know the committee and a lot of people spent a lot of time on I'm looking at Quinnesset. But knowing the concerns with Quinnesset and knowing, yes, there are some possible concerns with the Davisville Middle School property, we need to look into that. But looking at this, that seems like that's a more viable piece of property to use. And location-wise, it is now a little further north than where Quinnesset is. But looking at where it's being placed and what you can do with that land, I think we need to spend a little bit of time we have really focused on the properties that we believe we can use and looking at these options. I also agree that what Erin was saying, this needs to go back to school committee. We need a direction from the building committee for tomorrow night, and so that there possibly can be some direction provided from the school committee as to we're not going to look at Quinnesset anymore, and we're going to put our focus on these 2 options. And we need to put options out there that are going to be supported by the town, because if the bond doesn't pass, the town's not going to have anything. So I think our energy needs to be focused on what people in the town are willing to support and want for their schools, and what we can provide to them with what we have as possible locations and resources to use.
So based on that, do we think a motion is in order? And if it's not, please let me know. Do we think a motion, because I agree 100%, a motion is in order to send a recommendation to the school committee that we put a halt on all work at the Quinnesset site at this point, and that we ask our architect and our operations project manager to focus on option A and option B, find out how the town can assist them in providing any environmental issues, whatever we can do to help. And in addition, the town will also be looking for any other potential sites that we could look at, understanding that that really is probably going to be a long shot, but we should at least do our due diligence. Because I agree with the superintendent with that.
With all due respect, I don't, as much as I grew up here, I played basketball in Wickford Middle School's gym for years and years and years. When I look at the number for option B, like, I just don't think it's financially sustainable for our town. Like, I think the number we're asking for now is a number, you know, and I think it's worth it, and I think it's an investment, but I think to even explore option B is probably not maybe worth our time and money at this point, knowing that it would be, you know, a huge square footage for the two options.
And we need to know what that cost is gonna be, because if it goes over the 167.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't even think option B is an option. I'm saying I would explore option A.
With the cost of.
So as a committee, what do we think?
So
We should get a motion on the floor.
I'm gonna make a comment, not a recommendation. I think we should do boots on the ground at both locations. And the reason I say that is, what if something comes up at Davisville? Who knows? I don't know what we're gonna find. And if we don't have the information on the Wickford, or there's a group of residents that would like it at Wickford, or we can't afford to do, I don't know, let's say something happens with option A. We put all of our eggs in one basket for option A and something happens. The cost of building goes through the roof again. We have to put up one school, not two schools, or a smaller school. If we don't have the information on that Wickford site, we're gonna be right back to where we are.
I think the reason that I was saying that option B seems tricky is, even if you just take Davisville off the table, right? You're like, okay, Davisville is fine enough, like, we're just gonna leave it as is, and we're just gonna build one middle school. It seemed like that site isn't even big enough to build a modern middle school for that small amount of students for one school. And so I hear you, but I don't know if it's even worth that work. And I also am worried about the money that we're spending in these studies and in these different things. You know, that's all. I just wanna make sure that we're being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. And, you know, if it's really not possible to build a modern middle school on that site, like, why are we gonna do work to look at that at this moment, just at this moment right now within this scope? That's all.
I will let you know how long it will take to do a geological study of Davisville to find out what the environmental impacts are. Because at the end of the day, it may take, obviously the cost is gonna be much, much less, I believe, to remediate that site than to build the two schools.
Give a sense of.
And if it does, fits within the constraints of the superintendent.
We're hopefully gonna be able to get that tomorrow from PAR. But just to compare to Quidnesset, they were able to send the wetlands people out pretty quickly. We'll do that in a few weeks, so. But geotechnical would take longer. That needs to be scheduled, so we can come back tomorrow with that information, tomorrow or Wednesday.
So do we have a recommendation we'd like to send to the school committee? Is there a motion on the floor for any recommendation?
I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend that the school committee take up consideration of option A and direct the architect and project manager to devote their attention to whatever potential environmental impact there might be.
So discussion
and respond to that to the committee as quickly as possible. If there's a second.
This discussion, I just.
Do we need a second first?
Do you need a second for discussion?
Yes.
I'll make the
second for
second.
discussion purposes. Okay.
So, I'm not trying to be wrong, I just, if we don't have that information and something fails or happens, we're stopped again.
And discussion on the further discussion, what would be the additional cost or disadvantages of doing both options?
There's no disadvantage, but we also have to get back to you on that proposal. We haven't received it yet from Barb, we've asked for it, but we have not yet received it. As soon as we receive it, we'll let you know. Of course, Whitford's a much smaller site.
Yes.
What if something fails, we can only do Whitford? that we do not have that information on the land, we don't have it on the wetlands, there's easements on the property, we have an unknown of if there's anything in the field, which I was told was a sheep pasture at one time. We don't have anything on that lot, and we're right back to where we were.
And it's information that could help us in the future. School department wants to keep it, at least you know it's on the front. School department wants to turn it over to the town, at least we know it's on the front.
It's wetland flagging and running some test borings through the field and around the building. It's not $1 million project.
Do it on both.
I would agree.
What do they actually do when they do a test bore? Do they just drive a pipe in the ground, or do they have to go in with X-rays? Or
There's usually an auger, and then there's an analysis of the material that's removed. And sometimes there's actually a monitoring well that's actually installed to check the groundwater. Thank you, groundwater level. That's an important issue, obviously, for schools.
Because that in right field in Wickford was always a wet spot, and there was always a wet spot all usually.
I just don't want us to be stuck again. I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm really not.
Oh, no, I don't think it's difficult.
Don't worry about it.
But I don't wanna do work on something that, like, there's no chance we will ever build a school there. You know, like, that's the question. In my mind, I wanna explore all options at this point. I wanna make sure that we put forward the best option we have to the town, wherever that may be. But I don't know if there's a world where, you know, like, maybe we build a small elementary school there. Maybe, but I just wanna, and then not knowing the cost of how much the work would be, I think that information would be helpful, and that's something that, you know, we can get, but, like, without knowing that, like, I don't know. It's just something to think about, if this, because in my mind, that option will not work.
Well, one of the things that I heard at the council meeting is that prior to the November ballot, the election, we will need to know what the school department's plans are for all the schools including the vacated property. So we'd have to know what we're thinking of doing with Wickford if we're just going to Davisville. And to think, and to know what's gonna happen, to know whether that land is buildable would help you with the array of options that you have. Or to turn over to the town the array of options that we have. So I'm not sure what your plans are with the school, but it'll have to be something. Because if people are gonna say what's happening to Wickford Middle School, are you redistricting, are we consolidating? People would have to know that prior to voting. So.
I don't know if we need to know, yeah.
I think the more, you know, I know I would wanna know. And that's where I agree with Adam, is that I would agree that we should add Wickford to the list of doing some preliminary studies. You know, nothing too extravagant.
I think preliminary would be the
Absolutely,
key
and that we
word
have
there.
two options in front of the school committee, and the school committee could say, you know, yes, we'll go forward, but we only believe in option A. And that's up to the school committee, and then it's up to the council. But I think as a building committee, I think the mere fact that we're called a building committee, I think we want to know give us some idea preliminary as to what we are dealing with in the front of Wickford Middle School.
I think you could still have Tom's motion on the table, but still go into looking at what is in the front of Wickford Middle. Because if the school is truly going to be keeping that site for something in the future, they need to know this eventually. And so it would definitely help the bond question to know if it is a buildable site that, for whatever you decide to do with that area.
And again, I just thought of something as you're talking, is that, so also when someone says, why are you building one school, why don't you do one at Wickford Middle School? Well, we did a study and it's not buildable. At least it's an answer, you know, so I just think it could be valuable information. There's a motion on the floor, we can take a vote or we can amend it.
Do you have the actual motion language?
Sorry, Aaron?
Well, what the actual motion was?
The motion was to pursue option A with environmental testing. You were suggesting, or it's been, I would suggest strongly by members of the committee that we pursue testing for both options A and B. So I'll amend the motion to request that. I tend to agree with Aaron. I'm concerned that this is not going to be, I'm concerned it's not going to be productive, and she is trying to be mindful of the public fisc here. But I've got professionals who are around me who are making this suggestion, and I'm not going to ignore that. So I will amend the motion to ask that we pursue testing at both sites, option A and option B. So we have testing at both Davisville and Wickford. and so that we can get that as soon as possible.
Just preliminary on it.
Yeah, so we'll,
Just preliminary.
okay.
Just
We just
give
wanna
you
make sure
a-
there's no surprises.
And you'll know by tomorrow how long that's gonna take? Is that
We should have a set, we will have a conversation with PAR and understand the different levels, I mean, you know, and get a timetable.
Okay.
And just, and I know I'm speaking for the whole committee, just please do all we can to keep the cost down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
Whatever
I'll
we can
write
do.
the check.
Yeah.
It does not have to even be said, Rob.
And right,
We got
just because we're, you know, again, we've been dealt with a tough hand and we're trying to play it the best we can. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Next item is discussion of ride stage 2 timing. I'm not sure if there's anything there. Is there anything that you can go with?
No, so the stage 2, we are extending the stage 2 application to February. It was due in September, we have the extension, so we do have more time for submission, which is going to help us as we move forward, especially with some of the changes that we're looking at. So stage 2 will now be due, I think it's February 14th.
I think it's 14th.
Yeah.
Do you need anything from us at all?
Not at this time, not from today.
I do think something just with the committee long-term to think about is, with kind of looking kind of to the citizens' points, about all the schools is just, with QUID, if QUID ends up not being a site at all, I think the building committee needs to kind of consider that school and the long-term usage, feasibility, et cetera, because with the former plans, the school was gonna be, that elementary school wasn't going to exist anymore, and so I think that's just something when you all are kind of having future conversations about buildings and facilities, considering Knesset and its needs.
I think we still need to think about the elementary schools, and if the middle schools are gonna be 5-8, thinking about the elementary schools, and do we need to do it redistricting?
We can also look, while the environmental studies are done on our part, we can look into a more in-depth, maybe cost-benefit analysis of the two options, but, you know, comparing maybe some previous examples in the state that we know of or worked on within Jacobs or outside, and just getting maybe a better information, you know, rather than saying there's a price tag on it. Maybe have a little bit of a more in-depth detail or some kind of comparison that's more than just a few bullet points.
And Ken, I would say the redistricting is out of the scope of this committee, but the facility itself, what QUID needs, looking at the CIP and all of those sort of things, making sure that we're doing what's safe for students and different things, and making sure for students with the open classrooms and, you know, noise sensitivity, et cetera, what are we doing in that facility, that sort of thing.
So a question for you and the superintendent, one, with the school committee, you need to help me on this, would we want the school committee to provide guidance as to what you're doing regarding redistricting, and then we talk buildings, or do we talk buildings first? I mean, that's, like, what comes first?
Yeah, I think after we go through some more meetings, just I think with looking at the CIP, just, you know, that'll be back on the table,
Okay,
that's all I'm saying.
I don't want us to overstep our bounds.
No, 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 no.
We need to hear from you as to how you want to redistrict before we talk about it.
I believe with the option before, Knesset was going to close.
Yeah. Yeah, so all those costs and all the renovation costs and
But I think we still need
things.
to consider that, are we gonna keep all the elementary schools, or is that still something we discuss? Where just because we're changing the location, doesn't mean
It actually adds an
that
additional
may not-
facility need, that's what I'm saying.
Right, so we need to look and see, what do we do with all the elementary schools?
Yeah, and what needs and things, that's what I was just saying, is that, you know, we were gonna reduce an elementary school, and now if we move from the site, we're not reducing elementary school unless we close it, and so just something to consider as far as facilities and long-term planning, et cetera.
In the motion, I apologize, did we ask for the Knesset site to have work stopped? I didn't get.
We didn't ask for that, and I did that deliberately. I don't think we need to do anything, because I don't think the architects are doing anything with that regard right now. But I know Ralph is itching to get them to stop work at Knesset.
Oh, no.
I'm teasing you, Ralph,
No.
but, you know. My point is, I don't think it's a problem at this point.
And again, you know, not to belabor the point, I think we just go for adjournment, but as the superintendent and the school committee chair were just talking, it's making me feel even more, I'm glad that we actually are doing some work at Wickford Middle, because maybe you may say we're closing another elementary and we're putting it the site of Wickford Middle, you never know, so at least we've done some work. I want to hear what the plans of the school committee are, but
We definitely didn't say that.
I didn't say you did.
I know, I'm just saying, I don't think that's probably what would happen, is put an elementary school in Wakefield Middle School. I just wanna make sure people, well, we would have to, we're asking for quite a lot of money for, from the town for this project, so I think long-term, like, what we're gonna be able to build in the future is, gonna have to really be
But we
considered.
do know there's some extra money in that 167, that coupled with potentially selling the property where the schools that you're closing, I could actually build them. We don't know that. But at least we have the work done. I mean, I don't know what your plans are as far as consolidation and redistricting. I'm just saying, at least have a piece of property to look at. But that's your call, not mine, so. Okay, there's a motion in order for adjournment. Is there any other discussion?
Any other meetings set?
That's a good question.
But we can get one scheduled before we leave.
We had one on the 19th originally, but I think that one moved to this, right? So you're not there.
I'm out of town from the 12th through the 19th.
So 2 weeks. There's 10 weeks, I believe, until December 18th, if I count it correctly. So 2 weeks for.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, is sooner is better, because I think, in addition to meeting the deadlines and getting the information to the school committee and the town council, we want to make sure that we have the information for the citizens to be able to really digest it, really understand what they're voting on, really be able to work through those. So I would definitely encourage, if you are going to get some additional things that this building subcommittee needs to look at, sooner than later.
July 26th.
Let's try that. Let's try that, Sean.
July 26th.
July 26th.
25 and 26.
26.
Yes.
We don't know, but we don't know.
That's the impression I get.
What time is it?
Usually do 5 o'clock, but it's up to.
So 5 o'clock. 5
We
o'clock.
want to go back to 5 o'clock on the 26th? 5 o'clock, is that okay with everybody?
26.
We're going to go back to 5 o'clock. Excellent. Okay, motion order to adjourn? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
And so is the July 19th meeting, is that July?
Yeah.